Matt Chapman's been a big talking point in the Mariners fan base for the last 24 hours or so. We're going to discuss that as well as Blake Snell and some unfortunate news for one of the Mariners' newest prospects coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, February 16th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on. That's LOCKDON to get started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on the show today, we're going to talk about Blake Snell, because those rumors about him and the Mariners just won't seem to die. We'll also discuss some unfortunate news for one of Seattle's best pitching prospects, but we're actually going to start here with Matt Chapman, who, of course, is one of the several Scott Boras clients yet to sign with a team, even though we're already at pitchers and catchers reporting. Mariners beat reporter Ryan Divish yesterday was on with Brock and Salk on 710 Seattle Sports, and when Divish was asked about Chapman, Divish said that the Mariners have discussed Chapman internally, actually, and that if Chapman and Boras wind up lowering their demands, he could actually see the Mariners being interested to a certain degree. So this is, of course, sparked a massive debate on Mariners Twitter because, well, one, of course it did, and two, Chapman is a pretty polarizing free agent in general. I don't like this idea at all. I really don't. And Colby, I know you agree as well. You think it's stupid. So why is that?
There's no scenario where Matt Chapman's like realistic contract demands are going to dip down low enough to where it makes sense for the Mariners to sign a player like Chapman. Chapman is on the wrong side of 30. He is no longer an elite defensive third baseman. He's still very good, but he is certainly not elite by really any metric at this stage of his career. The last 2 years, he's really struggled to hit the fastball, particularly fastballs 94 or higher. He had a negative run value against that pitch the last 2 years. The strikeouts have crept up over the last 3 years. He is got some hip issues. He's got some back issues. He's 30 years old. He's an older player now. He's on the wrong side of 30. Again, there's a question about his bat speed. If you're struggling to catch up to fastballs, first question you have to ask is there a bat speed issue? And it feels like, yeah, there most certainly is for Matt Chapman. And that's not uncommon when you get past the age of 30, over the age of 30, you tend to lose some bat speed. Yeah. So when you look at Chapman's numbers last year, you look at the 110 WRC plus, cool. That's a mirage, because after the month of April, it was an 84 WRC plus, and that includes a July where he was really good. He had a really good July, and it was still not enough to, kind of rise up the rest of those numbers. Because
that illustrates just how bad he was in May, June, August, and September.
Right. When you look at that 84 WRC plus, 83, somewhere in that range.
It was 84, yeah.
What it represents, just put it into context, last year, Eugenio Suarez, who was your own over 30-year-old third baseman who didn't hit for any power, who struggled with strikeouts, has bat speed issues, who happened to have a 3-win season, mostly due to his spectacular defense. Sound familiar?
Right.
That guy posted a 102, 103 WRC plus. What does that mean? It means that what you got from Chapman, or what you got from Gino last year, was 20% better than what the Blue Jays got from Chapman for 5/6 of the year. That should terrify everybody, especially because Gino was only making $11-12 million. There is a 0% chance you are getting Chapman at that AAV. Zero. Because even if you think, well, if we do a 1-year deal, he might take $10-12 million. Nope.
Yeah,
Not happening.
I feel like people took what Divish said yesterday and blew it way out of proportion. That, oh hey, it'll get to a point where Chapman's going to take $10 million for 1 year. That's not going to happen. If you are getting him on a 1 year deal, it's probably for $25 million because he's sacrificing any sort of long term commitment, any sort of long term safety, right? I think what's happened here is that Chapman has offers on the table, or has had offers given to him that are for high AAVs, but not for 6-7 years like we've heard reported. And we know that Boris loves to hammer out those very long-term contracts for his clients, especially his bigger name clients like Matt Chapman. So even if they come down on the years, Divish was speculating yesterday that it could be like a 3-year deal. That's still going to be for a hefty price. And with the concerns about the bat, with the concerns about his back and his hip, I don't want to tie myself to $16 to $20 million a year for 3 years, knowing what the financial restrictions that this ownership group has placed on the front office are. I don't want that. Not for
Right.
Matt Chapman, who, I'm just going to say it right now, I'm going to get a lot of crap for this on Twitter. I don't care. I'm going to get a lot of crap for this down in the comments below. I'm not convinced Matt Chapman is going to be better than some combination of Luis Urias and Josh Rojas this season. I'm not. I can understand why people think that he's an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Totally get that on the surface, at least. But how much is that potential worth to you? I get it. It's not our money, but reality is front office is working with a budget. And the only way that you're getting Chapman, with everything we know about the Mariners payroll situation, unless things have changed or the wrong information has been reported about their payroll, they're going to have, Jerry and Justin are going to have to go to John Stanton, Chris Larson, and the rest of that ownership group and ask them to make an exception. And at that point, if they're having to make an exception, that's probably the rest of your money for this year. So do I want to sacrifice my ability to go get better with someone else this offseason before opening day or at the trade deadline, so I can maybe get an upgrade at third base and Matt Chapman, despite all the massive red flags that are present?
Let's just go over the scenarios here. So scenario that's probably best case scenario is that the Mariners have a lot more money to spend than we think they do.
Sure.
Which is kind of reliant on John Stanton growing a brain and a heart and spending what he should have spent anyways, which, let's not hold our breath, but let's just say best case scenario. John Stanton has seen the light and he tells Jerry, I think they have about $10 million left right now, 8 to 10, somewhere in that range, to get over where they were last year. Let's say he gives them another $10 million. So now you have $20 million. Why would you spend that on Matt Chapman when you could just go get that to Blake Snell? Blake Snell's better than Matt Chapman. It's not a position of need, but Snell's better than Chapman. Yeah. And if you have $20 million, you could do that this year. You could backload it a little bit and you can get a good deal on Chapman or on Snell, and maybe you just go get Montgomery instead. Like why not just go get the pitcher?
Well, and even though that Bellinger comes with his own red flags, I'd rather have Bellinger than Chapman.
Yeah. He's 27, 28 years old.
This is obviously assuming that, Cody Bellinger even wants to come to Seattle.
Right. Probably doesn't.
But we know that Blake Snell wants to come to Seattle. I'd rather give Blake Snell that money.
Right. And again, that's best case scenario is that you have this extra money.
And if you get Blake Snell, okay, now I can actually think about maybe trading Brian Wu or Bryce Miller for a third baseman.
Right. You don't have to, though.
You don't have to.
You could just put that guy in AAA and maybe summer it makes sense to trade him. Maybe you trade Logan Gilbert.
But the point is I can still maybe address third base that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's best case scenario, is that you just have extra money that we didn't know about. What's more likely is that the Mariners are going to go to, Stanton and be like, and this is assuming they have any interest in Chapman at all, and be like, hey, we want Chapman, but we're not going to give him 5 years at 16 to 20 million a year. Like we that's dumb. Like we can't do that. That's not a good use of our resources. So you want to give him 3 years, which means the AAV is going to go up. Every year less you give him, his AAV goes up. So what if he says 3 and 60, right? 20 million a year. Well, the Mariners go to Stanton and be like, well, we can get Chapman if you give us an extra $10 million for this year. Stanton's going to say no. And how did the Mariners clear $10 million of payroll? They probably trade Ty France and Josh Rojas. Cool. Who's the starting first baseman now? You've traded essentially France and Rojas for Chapman, and you've taken on more payroll obligation than you had before. You're better off just keeping France and Rojas. Like, there's not a lot of big contracts left to trade for the Mariners. Again, that's best case. Or that's, one.
Well, and if you trade France, all right, Rayleigh becomes your first baseman. Okay, now I have a hole in the outfield.
Right. Now do I have it? And I don't have any money to go get Tommy Pham. I don't have any money to go get Adam Duvall. Like, I'm out. I'm tapped out. The other scenario is that you backload a deal so significantly that it hurts you and it eats up all that money you saved with the Robbie Ray trade. And again, if you're backloading a deal that significant and it's a short-term deal, it's a high AAV. So if you do 3 and 60 or whatever, and you backload that and you only pay him $8 million this year, okay, now you owe him $52 million over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to lose a player if you sign Chapman to that type of deal. You're going to lose somebody you shouldn't. Is Matt Chapman worth that? No, there's no scenario. There's no point in Chapman, because even if any of those scenarios are, yes, you're willing to do that. If you're willing to do that for Chapman, you're better off doing it for Snell.
Right. Okay. If Chapman's the only guy that will take my money, I'm cool with it only if I get the guarantee that I can still do more after adding Matt Chapman. If I can, I don't care then. Add Matt Chapman. I really don't care.
Right. But this is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, we have zero evidence to suggest that Mariners ownership is going to allow that. So the best case scenario to get Chapman is that he takes like 3 years at, like, let's say 3 and 50 is like, he's willing to take that from you. That is best case. And you even backload it a lot.
Sure.
Now you have no money for the deadline. You have to make really tough decisions next year because of this backloaded contract. You're going to have to pay Matt Chapman more than you were.
Yep.
And you have a player who may or may not produce.
Right.
You can't feel good about Chapman is just such a flawed player. Like, again, if you're going to make special exceptions in your payroll, if you're going to try and backload things and deal with the headache later, you do it with a guy like Blake Snell, not a guy like Matt Chapman.
Yeah.
It just, if Matt Chapman makes any bit of sense, the Mariners can swing Matt Chapman in any way. They should just shift their focus to Snell.
Right.
And just put those efforts into acquiring Snell. And even that has its own problems, but it's better than Chapman.
We're going to keep this conversation going and talk about Blake Snell a little bit more in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Backblaze. Backblaze offers unlimited cloud backup for Macs, PCs, and businesses for just $99 a year. You can easily protect business data through a centrally managed admin and protect all the data on your machines automatically. It is easy to deploy across multiple workstations with various deployment options. You can also add on enterprise control, which includes granular access permissions, advanced single sign-on, group management controls, and compliance support. Backblaze also offers multiple restore options, including rapid recovery in the event of data loss or ransomware, and you can access your backed up data from anywhere in the world using the app on iOS or Android. Visit backblaze.com/lockedonmlb so they know where you came from and continue to support the show. Backblaze is recommended by the New York Times, Inc. Magazine, Macworld, PC World, and many more. You can receive a fully featured, no-risk, free trial at backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. Go there, try it out, and start protecting yourself from potential bad times. Start today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And by the way, be sure to tune in on Monday as we're going to be announcing our next big giveaway. So keep an eye out for that. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. You're definitely going to want to enter that one. All right. So we're talking about Matt Chapman. We're going to talk a little bit about Blake Snell here in a moment, but going back to the whole like comparison to Gino Suarez, I mean, functionally, this would just be stupid from that perspective as well, because you had Gino on a pretty reasonable deal from a money standpoint for just one more year, and then you're done with it. Why would I trade that deal which was undeniably, at least to a certain degree, motivated by getting rid of that contract just to give more money and possibly more years to Matt Chapman, who has very similar red flags.
Mm-hmm.
And why would John Stanton and company approve of that when they're the reasons that you traded Geno Suarez, at least partly?
Right.
Like, I don't get how the logic here lines up.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. So look, I get why people want Matt Chapman. Totally get it. Recognizable name, has been
Pretty much
consistently
stops
a
right
three.
there.
Has been consistently a 3-4 win player. But also, like you mentioned, a lot of that has been because of the defense. And the defense, well, Chapman is still a really good defender. He's not elite anymore, at least by the metrics, right? And you guys know how we feel about defensive metrics. They are not accurate, right?
They're not great.
But he went from plus 17 outs above average in 2021, which is insane, to I believe like
6.
one or 4 or something like that in 2022, and then like 5 this year.
Yeah.
It's still really good.
Mhm.
But it's not elite.
Nope. He's not as good as people think he is. And he never really was as good as people thought he was, because the strikeouts were always there. The swing and miss was always there. The issues with the bat were always there. It just was masked a lot by this glove. So, like I said, I mean, I don't like, if Chapman's in a Mariners uniform and it doesn't prevent them from doing something else, like at the deadline, then like fine. But again, the only way I see that being plausible whatsoever is if John Stanton magically decided to reinstate the budget that Jerry thought he had entering this year, which would still be awful. I mean, it would almost be worse, because it's like, oh, cool, how many free agents did we miss out on because you decided to wait until February to tell Jerry, oh no, actually, you know what, that budget I gave you, we could do that, we could swing that. So
Chapman this in 2022 +1 outs above average, and then in 2023 +4.
Yeah,
so
it's good. Like, it's fine. But I'm pretty sure Geno was better last year defensively.
It's just in hindsight, and obviously hindsight is 2020, all that, whatever. I get it, but like, I would just rather have Geno. I would have just rather they just keep Geno than turn around to just give basically Geno more money.
Yeah, I don't think Chapman for the money is a better option than Geno for his money would have been. Yeah. So, and honestly, though, to be fair, I don't know that paying Chapman twice what you're about to pay Urias and Rojas for that position, I don't think that's a smart use of money either.
Right. The last thing I'll add on this, because I've seen this on Twitter a little bit, is, why are you putting so much stock into Chapman's WRC plus since May, but you're kind of ignoring, Rayleigh's second half and Urias's year and all that? Okay. There's a very, very obvious difference, monetary difference between Matt Chapman and Luke Rayleigh and Luis Urias. That it should be very obvious why I'm more willing to bank on those guys turning it around than Matt Chapman. Also, age, trajectory, etc.
Yeah, because of the guy you're paying the league minimum to, and it only costs you Jose Caballero. If that dude is just, second half Luke Rayleigh, that's a lot easier to absorb and solve. That's a lot easier problem to solve than if your $20 million a year third baseman continues to decline rapidly on a multi-year deal that you're going to struggle quite mightily to move. Yeah. Like, you're kind of stuck with Chapman. So again, once you sign him.
They sign Matt Chapman. Okay, I'm not pissed off, right? It goes back to the whole conversation of like getting a little too much, whatever. Okay, cool, fine, sure. But to me, Chapman is more like just another option rather than he is definitively better. I'm not willing to say that he's definitively better than what they have right now because of all these red flags. I get what the WAR is. I get all of that, but I'm not there. I'm not there with some people on that.
No. Anyway, I would just wrap it up by saying this. Chapman is a good player who is declining, which is not really up for debate. He's a good player who's declining. You don't have the ownership group to
Yeah.
take big chances with money.
Mm.
You can take big chances with prospects. You can take big chances on the trade market. You can't do it with money, and it sucks. It sucks, but it's reality. And
Yeah.
expecting Jerry or trying to pressure Jerry and Justin to operate as if they're not in reality is unfair to them. And no matter how much it sucks, you can't solve. Like, if you disagree with me in the comments, here's what I would ask you: convince me that signing Chapman isn't simply the front office or ownership spending money to show that they're willing to spend money.
Yeah.
How is it a smart baseball move? Don't give me, well, he's a name, he'll sell tickets. No, he won't. You're no closer to winning the World Series with Matt Chapman on your roster than it is right now. You're not. So, how is signing Chapman? How would that be about anything other than trying to show people like, oh yeah, no, we're totally willing to spend money.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like a move that people want to spend money for the sake of spending money.
Yep.
Rather than it actually make it, like, I feel like people are willfully ignoring all these red flags just because, hey, it's been floated out there that the Mariners might actually want to spend money on someone.
Yep.
So yeah. All right. So we're actually, I promise we are going to talk about Blake Snell. We're going to do that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. With football officially in the books and some time before baseball gets underway, why don't you try your hand at betting on some hoops? Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKDON. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So, all right, let's finally talk about Blake Snell. I keep hearing that there are rumors out there about Snell and the Mariners, but I'm not necessarily firm on what those are. So can you clear that up for us, Colby?
Sure. Doing the best I can to respect the paywall. Jason Churchill of Baseball Things and Future Star Series has recently shared that multiple people have told him repeatedly that the Snell and Seattle Mariners connection is legitimate, and I'll leave it at that because again, I want to respect the paywall a little bit, but that, and again, keep in mind, Churchill is not on the Snell bandwagon. He doesn't think that these rumors are true. But the people who are telling him, he respects them and believes them so much that he's not going to dismiss them. So,
Sure.
Again, go subscribe to his podcast. It's worth the money. And you can listen to the whole conversation there. But I think that's the most I can say without
sure.
obliterating that paywall. So Snell to the Mariners, real enough that even a skeptic is willing to acknowledge that
right,
it might actually happen. It could actually happen.
So I'll add this. I have third, fourth hand information here. So take it with the absolute tiniest grain of salt here.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told that someone that's close to Blake Snell believes that there really hasn't been any connection there.
Yep.
That it's consistently, every time they've asked about it, it's consistently been the Angels, the Giants, the Yankees, teams like that, but not the Mariners.
Yep.
So
that's what I had heard pretty much up until I heard what Churchill said.
Right. So I don't know what the case is here. I mean, Snell has been pretty adamant. He's been pretty open that he wants to come to Seattle. Mm-hmm. I mean, for God's sakes,
he's not shy about
Sunday Night Football, Mike Tirico is like, Blake Snell wants to be a Mariner.
Yep.
Okay. Like, gee, I
By
wonder
the
who
way,
told him that.
Some quick breaking news, not Mariners related, but
Okay.
kind of.
Okay.
The Phillies are the team that has signed Whit Merrifield,
Oh,
and he got $8 million.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'm happy
fine.
the direction they went.
That's fine. Yeah. It's the same. Me too. But that's not terrible. It's not
No, they could have swung that. Yeah, that would have been fine.
Yeah.
It's like right at the high end of what I would have been comfortable with, but yeah.
Yeah. So,
anyways,
we know that Snell very much wants to be a Mariner. I don't know if that's still the case because maybe he's moved on by now. Like he's gotten his answer and he's moved on.
Yeah.
I don't know. But if that's not the case, maybe he is very much willing to work with them as much as he possibly can to make this thing work. I don't see it because this is his last chance to get paid, like paid. He's coming off of a Cy Young winning season. I get money is not everything for every player. And playing for the Mariners might be very, very, very important to Blake Snell. I just don't see it.
$50 million important.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that.
Like, walk through the scenario here. Like, so what if Blake Snell takes a 1-year deal? Like, okay, that's still $25 million at least on a 1-year deal. Probably $30 million. Where do the Mariners get the money? If it's not coming from John Stanton, they don't have the players to trade to clear $20 million in payroll to make that work. Yeah. So 1-year deal, probably not going to happen. A shorter term multi-year deal, 3 years, maybe something like that. Okay. That's because it's a short-term deal. That's probably still $100 million. You can't pay the guy like $10 million in year one and then pay him $45 million the next 2 years to make up the difference. Like you can't swing that. So a multi-year, but still relatively short-term deal, that doesn't really work either. So what you're back to is, will he sign 5 and 125 with you instead of 1 and 150 with another team? Probably not, but let's say he did. Okay.
Right.
And you can pay him $10 million this year, and that wipes you out for the deadline. Now you have to trade salary to add salary, but whatever. Might be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you owe Blake Snell $115 million over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit less than $30 million, $28.5 million a year.
Sure.
That's still a lot. And this is a guy who has only gone over 180 innings twice in his career. He has durability concerns. He has stamina concerns. He's 30 years old. He has walk concerns. $28 million over the next 4 years, $28.5 million over the next 4 years. And that's if you just do a flat payment. Maybe it's $10 million this year, 16 next year, but then that means that last year of the deal is $38 million. Right.
Yeah.
Like I can't put together a contract scenario that seems remotely feasible to even like offer Blake Snell without it coming across as incredibly insulting, unless Snell is willing to take like the biggest hometown discount we have ever heard of. And it's just not going to happen because, like you said, this is his last best shot to get paid. Like his value in theory is never going to be higher. Now, is he going to get the $200 million he wanted? Doesn't seem like it. Seems like that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
But like, he's not going to sign with the Mariners for 1 year and $12 million.
Right.
Like, it's just not going to happen.
He might sign for like 1 year and 35.
Right. And maybe because it's the Mariners, it's like 1 and 28.
Sure.
But like, that's still a 20% discount. Like hometown discounts are not 20%. Like hometown discounts typically are like 5%, if that.
Right.
Like,
I just don't see it. But again, if the Mariners are actually, two scenarios here. If they're able to get Stanton and company to make an exception for Snell, for Bellinger, for Chapman, etc., okay, fine. As long as they get a guarantee that they can do more after that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, Stanton's heart has grown 3 sizes as big or whatever, like the Grinch, right? And now he's like, here you go, Jerry, here's money. Okay, fine, cool. I just don't see it. I don't see
either of those scenarios being likely.
I don't see it. But
and then, by the way, if the idea is like, well, you could trade Luis Castillo. Why? Castillo is better than Snell.
Right. Yeah. It's just anyway.
Like you'd rather have Castillo for, I think he's got like 5 and 112 left on his deal. You'd rather have that than Blake Snell at 5 and 130.
Yeah.
Like And then, you go, okay, well, yeah, but now you can trade, Brian Wu or something. Like, who's trading for Brian Wu on February 16th? Like, you're not moving Wu or Miller until July, like at the deadline at the
Right.
earliest.
If I can pick up conversations with the Rays and talk about Isak Paredes, fine, even though that I have concerns about Isak Paredes and
Yeah.
how his bat is going to translate to T-Mobile Park. That said,
That's a
though,
lot of fly balls.
if I can get Blake Snell and then turn around and trade Wu or Miller for a third base option, okay, great, fine,
Or like Luis Robert, like a star,
sure,
basically.
whatever. I'm on board, right? Like, I'm fine with that. You don't need Matt Chapman. You don't need Blake Snell.
No.
You can get those guys, and I'm totally fine with it as long as you're guaranteed. You can still do more. You still have flexibility. That's my only thing here.
Right. Can you get those guys without hurting the rest of your team?
Right. All right. So, lastly, before we get out of here, I was told today by a source that Mariners right-handed pitching prospect Cole Phillips, who was, of course, acquired in the Jared Kelenic trade with the Braves back in December, has undergone a second Tommy John surgery as of a couple of weeks ago. And he's expected to miss all of 2024 as well as at least a portion of 2025. I know there's a couple of other reports out there that say that it's more of like a cleanup on his first Tommy John rather than a second actual Tommy John surgery. I don't know, but what I was told was it was a second Tommy John surgery. So I'm just reporting what I was told. Obviously, this is a massive bummer for the Mariners and makes an already bad trade optically look even worse.
Sure.
But really, my first thought here, and what's most important here, is this is a massive bummer for Cole Phillips, who hasn't pitched a full season since 2019 and likely won't do so until 2026.
Yeah. By the way, I did see the one person who was kind of contradicting you has clarified that the recovery time is still the same, whether it was a second Tommy John
Right.
or a. So any way you want to slice it, he is out for this year and probably a good portion of next year. And it's a bummer. Like, this is a guy who was, coming out of high school, he was one of the best high school arms in the country. He was a first round pick. And he still got paid a little. He was a second round pick. I mean, like, it's not that, he completely, his career was ruined, but at least monetarily. But this is a guy who had a chance to get to the big leagues quick. When you look at the profile, like, he could have been in the big leagues at the end of this year or next. Like, this is a mid-rotation starter with upside, and it's a really good prospect. It really is. But your second elbow surgery before you've thrown a professional pitch, it's starting to feel a little Sam Carlson-y a little bit, which is again very similar profiles. So, I hope Cole's in good spirits. It's still a bummer. It really is, because this guy was, if he was able to pitch this year, he had a shot to really like jettison up the ranks and really help this team in a couple of years. And now we'll see if he ever throws a pitch. I mean, I'm sure he's not thinking this way, but it's just a couple of elbow surgeries before you're 20 years old, 21 years old. And now you're basically going to go 3 years without throwing a competitive pitch. Like, it's going to be a tough road back, but I'm rooting for him. I hope that all Mariner fans are. It's not his fault that, the Mariners had to trade Jared Kelenic with Evan White and Marco Gonzalez. Like, it's not his problem. And, I would hope that most of us, we hear that news and our first thought would be like, that sucks for the kid. But that's a bummer. And it's not like, oh, well, that trade looks so much worse now. Like,
and there's going to be time to have that conversation, and we'll have that conversation.
Sure. I mean, to be fair, if you watched Wednesday's show, Ty would have already ranked that as the worst move they made, and I ranked it as like the second worst. Yeah. So there's really can't get much worse. Like, let's be honest. So
no, it was the lowest point of the off season.
Sure.
And I mean, I guess it's lower, but it's not really below
Phillips
anything else.
Phillips could have won a Cy Young award from the Mariners, and that still would have been like, I mean, it would have felt a lot better, but it still would have been like, yeah, that sucked.
Sure. Yeah.
So
it is what it is at the time, knowing what the motivation behind that trade was and all that. Yeah. Obviously very, very bad. Very bad.
It is what it is. But I hope Cole's in good spirits, and I hope that he's the exception to the double Tommy John rule, which is typically not a good success rate, but I hope he's the exception, and
Yep.
It's a bummer. That was one of the guys that was going to be really fun to track this year, and now we'll just have to wait a little bit longer.
Right, especially for a farm system that is really devoid of pitching talent right now. He was arguably the best pitching prospect in the farm system. Second, third, doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Teddy
top
McGraw's
five.
in there, Gino Martinez is in there, etc. But
Technically, Emerson Hancock's still in there.
actually, you know what? I forgot about that. That's a good reminder. That's a good reminder considering that we're starting up prospect week next week. We actually have a full schedule laid out already for next week's slate of shows. So Monday, Mailbag Monday, we'll announce the giveaway on that episode as well. And
Don't
then
forget to use the Google Doc for that.
Yep.
Or Twitter.
Link will be in the description. Tuesday we'll do prospects 30 through 21. Wednesday we'll do prospects 20 through 11, and then Thursday we'll do prospects 10 through 1, and then on Friday we'll continue our Mariners content creator spotlight series with Ben Ranieri of the C-Level Substack. So look forward to that. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you next time. Peace.